Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Philly, and in my last video, it was requested that I review some of the Ashen Wolves characters, so I wanted to take a look at Constance. I feel like Yuri, Happy, and Balthus are all talked about quite a bit, but for some reason, Constance goes under the radar, so I wanted to give her a little bit of time in the spotlight with this review. Also, I do warn you that at some points in this video, it may start to sound like a comparison between Constance and Lysithea. This is because I feel like people don't talk about Constance as much as the other DLC characters, as they write her off as just a worse version of Lysithea. While that argument may have some merit, I actually think that comparing Constance to Lysithea just proves how good she is, as Lysithea is often regarded as one of the best units that this game has to offer. I also think that the comparisons are made so frequently that it would just be a mistake for me to not address them in this video. As always, I want to mention that while some of the opinions in this video will apply to all difficulty levels, this series is solely focused on how a unit performs in maddening mode on a new game file. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's start talking about Constance. You're going to notice that Constance's base stats are very unimpressive, aside from the 11 base magic, which is tied for the second highest in the game behind Hubert. Her growths are pretty similar. She has the highest magic growth in the game tied with Lysithea at 60%. Speed is mediocre at 35%, and all other growth rates are pretty much terrible. Awful bases and growths don't tell the full story with this character though. We'll get into it a little bit later, but magic is basically the only stat that Constance needs. For skill levels, at base she comes with D+ in Reason, E+ in Authority, and D in Flying. She has boons in Sword, Reason, Authority, and Flying, and she has Banes in Axes and Heavy Armor. She also has a budding talent in Brawling, which unlocks the combat art Mystic Blow, but I doubt you're going to be using this very often. Her Reason spell list is incredibly good, including Sagittae for high early game damage with good reliability, Fimbulvetter at B rank, which provides extremely high might and a good crit rate, long range magic and bolting, and the strongest black magic spell in the game, Agni's Arrow. Comparing to Lysithea's spell list for a second, Lysithea's spells have slightly more utility with Luna and Dark Spikes, but Constance gets bolting for a long range option that Lysithea just doesn't have. Both characters come with reason lists that are very capable of one-shotting opponents through the entirety of the game, even on maddening mode. For her faith spells, similar to Lysithea, Constance gets access to the most powerful white magic spell in Three Houses, Abraxas. This spell can provide a high might option if you've used up all your Agni's arrows for a map. She also gets access to Rescue for some great utility. While this clearly isn't as good as Lysithea's access to Warp, Rescue is still a very useful spell if you are trying to clear a map quickly. Her personal ability is Circadian Beat. This grants strength and magic +3 when indoors, and defense and res +3 when outdoors. Note that this ability doesn't always work the way you think it should. Sometimes what seems to be the wrong stat boost will apply, so I suggest checking the stat boost at the start of each map. Either way, it's a good ability that gives Constance boosts in 2 stats for every single map. For learned abilities, she gets Rally Magic and Rally Resistance. Nothing really too special here. Rally Magic is useful, but if you're using Constance, she's likely going to be the main magic dealer in your party, so she won't be having too much time to buff other characters. For combat arts, she gets both of the Magic Sword combat arts, as well as Mystic Blow. These probably could be useful, but I just can't see them being better than her insanely powerful spell list. One final note is that she does possess the major crest of Noah. This has a 20% chance of conserving a use of attack magic. It doesn't seem super good, but it sure is nice when it activates on a use of bolting. For early game strengths, Constance has great availability, similar to the other DLC characters. As she comes with D+ in Reason, she can have Sagittae available right away for a high damage reliable spell. There's also a lot of indoor maps in the early part of the game, meaning that Constance will have a boosted magic stat due to her personal ability for many of the maps early on. Mid to late game is where Constance really starts to shine. Once you unlock Fiendish Blow and start to unlock her stronger spells like Fimbulvetter, Bolting, and Agni's Arrow, she will be able to reliably one-shot many units before most of the other units on your team would be able to. As she has a crest, she can also wield the Thyrsus Staff without taking any damage. I mean, it's a small point, but it is worth mentioning. Overall, she will fill the same role that Lysithea or someone else like Hubert might fill. It's just that one mage that nukes everything. I mean, it's always a good thing to have, right? Weaknesses? Well, terrible bases and growths aside from the magic stat as we saw earlier. It might actually be the worst set of growths in the game if you don't count the magic stat, but like I said, magic is all we need. I'm not sure I need to mention it, but with those stats, I mean, it's pretty obvious that Constance won't be putting any work in on the enemy phase, unless you go with a Vantage build. Another weakness you might say is a lack of utility. While she does have access to rescue and a couple of the rally skills, she doesn't get warp or any of the good healing spells like Physic, Restore, or Fortify. So that really limits her to only being an offensive unit. As Constance is a female, she has access to all of the best magic classes in the game. You really can't go wrong with Gremory or Dark Knight, but the class I think that Constance takes advantage of better than any other unit in the game is Dark Flyer. First off, she has boons in Reason and Flying, which allow her to meet the requirements for this class very easily. She also has a boon in Authority, meaning that she is able to access the higher ranked flying battalions with relative ease, such as the Nouvelle Flyer Corps, which I would definitely recommend. But the reason I believe Constance fills this role better than Lysithea isn't just because of the boon in flying that Lysithea doesn't have. It's because the Dark Flyer class only gets Black Tome Fair, and not Dark Tome Fair. This means that Constance will receive an extra 5 damage on her attacks while in this class, and Lysithea will not. With their similar growth rates, this actually means that most times, Constance will hit harder as a Dark Flyer than Lysithea would. Constance is constantly? Sorry, had to do it. Compared to Lysithea, and for good reason. They both fill the role of being an incredibly powerful mage that can often one-hit KO enemies from range. However, I don't think she should be written off as just being a discount Lysithea. Although they share many similar qualities, with Lysithea having the edge in many of those aspects, Constance carves out a niche for herself in the Dark Flyer class, which is easily the best magic class in all of Three Houses. The fact that she gets bolting to eliminate high-risk targets at long range also gives her an edge on many of the other nuke archetype characters, like Hubert and Flame. In my opinion, as I mentioned earlier, Constance is the best Dark Flyer in the game. While she may fall just short of being the best magical unit in the game due to having less utility than Lysithea, this doesn't mean she's a bad character by any means. I would highly recommend that you reconsider if you've ever cast her aside thinking, why would I use Constance when I could just use Lysithea? I did that for a while, but then I finally gave her a shot in my last playthrough, and she was actually one of the standout units on my team. So, my final verdict? 9 out of 10 Authority stars. I think Constance is a high tier unit that falls just short of being top tier due to having pretty much no enemy phase potential and lacking a little bit of utility. If you enjoy making a broken team of flyers in Three Houses, which I'm guessing many of you do, I highly suggest trying her out, as she'll fit perfectly into your army. Well, that's it for this unit review. If you liked the video and you'd like to see more of this series, or just more Three Houses content in general, I would really appreciate if you hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.